Today we're going to be talking about the fix for tight hamstrings and why mostly men get this so wrong all the time. So let's recap the problem. You have these tight, stiff hamstrings and you're like, oh God, I cannot touch my itchy kneecaps. You sit around in your chair all day, tippity-tap typing. You go on Google and you find all these different stretches and they all look the same. They're all basically you hanging out like this, hoping and praying that eventually these tight things will let go. Or you may find some videos that say, just do this and keep trying, and that doesn't seem to work either, even though you've been doing that every single day for 6 months. Or you might have this PE gym teacher mentality where maybe if you just do the sit and reach from the presidential fitness test, you'll be able to one day reach just by force of will, and because at some point, maybe, luckily, hopefully, these hamstrings will let go, but they just don't. They never let go. Why don't they let go? Why are your hamstrings so tight? It's because of a couple things. First is habit. So you are constantly sitting around like this all day, every day. What does that do with your hamstrings? Well, it teaches your hamstrings to be shortened, right? Lengthened hamstrings, that would look like this. These muscles here are lengthened like that, right? But that's not you. You're never in this position. You're always in this shortened position, right? The knee is flexed. The other thing that it does is your hip flexors are weak because you're just hanging out here. They're all just sort of kind of holding you up. They're basically getting used to just maintaining this position with this configuration. And that means you're not getting as much activity from these muscles when you go to do something like try to touch your toes. Now you might be a little confused right now, and it's okay. I'm going to return to that topic in a second, okay? So you have your habits and you have crappy stretching, right? You have crappy attempts to improve your flexibility. Why do I say it's crappy? It's because your hamstring stretching is basically designed to fail, okay? You are doing stuff that doesn't actually teach the hamstrings to do what you want them to do. So when you go to do this, a lot of times you're doing it wrong, right? You're just like, crunching my spine as much as possible, curl it to get as close as I can. That's not going to make your hamstrings less stiff, not going to fix hamstring flexibility issues. Also, you're doing this on two legs, which is not necessarily bad, but really encourages the spine to start doing this, right? So that's not so good. And you're not actually putting your hamstrings in a position that will force them to actually lengthen, right? So when we go two legs, which again is not bad, I have a video about learning to touch your toes by just doing it this way. It's simpler to think about, but for many of you, there's a execution problem, right? But if you're doing it on two legs, it's gonna make it more likely that you are going to bend the spine, okay? And that's not what we want. We need to keep that straight as the motion happens here. Now, one way to deal with this is to just do one leg at a time, which then means, okay, maybe I go like this, and then it's a lot easier to keep the spine straight because you don't feel the lock of your whole pelvis, right? If you're going two legs like this, both sides of your hamstrings, they're super stiff, they both lock, they pull on your pelvis and keep them there, or keep your pelvis here in that stuck position, and then the spine bends. But if you take one leg out of the equation so that only one side of the pelvis is getting that lockdown, then hey, guess what? You're not gonna feel like your spine needs to curl so much, and you can focus more on feeling just the stretch in one side. But that's not all, right? We also need to make sure that what we're doing is making the hamstrings work as they lengthen. Hey, I want to give a quick shout out to some new Patreon supporters who are giving $5 or more per month. Mason, Steve, Bill, and Freeze Dry Chef, thank you so much for your support on Patreon. If you want to support this channel too, use the Patreon or PayPal links you'll find in the description box, or use the join and thanks buttons you'll find on YouTube. Thanks so much for your support. Now let's get back to it. If we're just standing here and we're trying to stretch our hamstrings, the hamstrings are getting a little bit of a signal to lengthen, right? They're saying, okay, something's happening. We have the weight of our body here, the weight of our head is over here is creating leverage that's asking the hamstrings to lengthen, okay? So if we can get more leverage into this equation, we can get the hamstrings to feel more pull, okay? So if we're just like this, how do we increase the amount of pull or stretch that's being demanded on the hamstrings? Well, one way is to reach out farther. We lengthen the lever arm, and that creates even more pull on the hamstrings. So you can do something like this, or if you don't have the shoulder strength to hold that, you can put your hands behind your head. That's going to increase that stretch sensation on the hamstrings. You can also grab onto a weight, right? And do the same thing. Really focusing on keeping that spine in a good position, focusing on feeling the stretch in the hamstrings, and just going and allowing the weight to force the hamstrings to do the work. All right, so then you've got, oh yeah, length happening all over the place. Now, of course, if you really want your hamstrings to be functional and lengthen and not so tight anymore, then you need to teach them how to be strong in lengthened positions. So that's where having the weight really helps. You're firing it, and it's just like, oh yeah. Because you've got weight there that's saying, hamstrings, you need to not let us collapse, right? But you also need to lengthen because this weight is there and you're getting tired, right? So the hamstring fibers are going, whoa, something's pulling us apart. We gotta keep working. We cannot suffer catastrophic failure. Let's just keep lengthening and working and lengthening and working. So the key here is to use a light enough weight where you feel safe, where you feel like the hamstrings are getting that stretch and the hamstrings are working. Now, to improve something like the toe touch and to get more hip flexion, which is what it is to have, that's what you're aiming for, right? You're trying to get flexible hamstrings so you can get better hip flexion. To get that, you also need your hip flexors to be stronger to pull you deeper into hip flexion. So you can see the angle here closes down a lot, right? It can boop like that, but when we sit, we're sitting around 90 degrees. So we need the strength to be able to get ourselves deeper into that position. That's where doing stuff like hip flexor strengthening really helps. Now, I have a video about being able to touch your toes, like exercises you need to help you touch your toes. I strongly encourage you to watch that. I'm gonna link it in the description box, and if you're lucky, I'm also gonna put it somewhere up here, okay? That video, watch it. It's gonna help you strengthen the hip flexors, help you do some more of the exercises that'll help you touch your toes. It'll show you how to do the weighted version of the toe touch with 2 legs safely and effectively. It's gonna help you fix your tight hamstrings for good. And before we finish up, we also need to talk about that first factor, which was habits. Make sure that you're not just sitting in a chair all freaking day and allowing your hamstrings to just shorten up. Make sure you're teaching them on a regular basis throughout the day that you want them to be a little bit longer. So that means maybe you take a break every 1 or 2 hours and just maybe practice. Can I touch my toes yet? No, of course not. But over time, as your hamstrings get less tight, as your hamstrings loosen up, you're gonna notice, hey, it's not really such a big stretch, literally or metaphorically, for my hamstrings to lengthen and allow me to touch my toes. Oh, my sweet, sweet big toe. Also, don't be afraid to play around with different angles and positions of your feet so you can explore different parts of your hammies. Angling your feet in or turning them out is gonna help you feel different stuff. It's gonna help you challenge different parts of your hamstrings, and that's gonna be a net gain. I've got more videos to help you with your tight hamstrings here. Support me by using the PayPal or Patreon links in the description box, or use the join or thanks buttons on YouTube. Like, share, and subscribe, and as always, I hope you remember that pain sucks, life shouldn't.